This August 30th is the International Day for the Victims of Enforced Disappearances. The day was established by the UN General Assembly in 2010. It had been championed by the Latin American Federation of Associations for Relatives of the Detained or Disappeared. To mark the day, civil rights groups, activists, families of victims, and people from around the world are demonstrating and making their voices heard. In commemoration of the day, the International Committee of the Red Cross has urged the new Colombian government to search for the over 83,000 people who disappeared in the country. The unit for the search for disappeared people was created as part of the peace accords between the Colombian government and the FARC. Signed in 2016, its director has said that political will is needed because families are yet to receive any response. Thousands of Hondurans are also marching to mark the day. They are demanding new presidential elections, a constituent assembly, and justice for social leaders and activists murdered during the post-election protest in November. They also want the elimination of the military police and agrarian reform. The Nigerian authorities must immediately release thousands of people who have been subjected to enforced disappearances and held in secret detention facilities across the country without charge or trial. So says Amnesty International. And Brazilians have been visiting the Resistance Memorial in Sao Paulo on the International Day of Victims. Visitors honored the political prisoners, the dead, and the missing from the Brazilian military dictatorship. Meanwhile, in Chile, those found guilty of crimes against humanity have been released by the courts, much to the dismay of activists around the continent. Our correspondent in Chile, Paolo Dragnich, has more details.
They let the murderers of the Augusto Pinochet dictatorship free, the ones who killed their families. And while today the whole world commemorates the International Day of the Disappeared, in Chile, family members cannot demonstrate because of the police of the special forces, who are preventing them to march freely through the avenue and preventing them also to be able to leave photographs of their families in La Moneda Palace. This is what is happening today, August 30th, on the International Day of the Disappeared.
At least 21 journalists have been reported missing in Mexico since 2003. The NGO Reporters Without Borders is saying that this statistic is a, quote, record in the Americas. They say that the creation of the Specialized Prosecutor's Office for Investigation of the Crimes of Enforced Disappearance, promoted by the current administration of Enrique Peña Nieto, has, quote, not been accompanied by any concrete strategic action plan in the case of journalists. There has been no detailed public information on the progress of investigations, nor a comprehensive compensation plan for families, as recommended by the National Human Rights Commission in 2016.
Each day, new fathers, mothers, and children disappear. Today, we gathered here for them.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has arrived to Colombia as part of his Latin American tour. He was welcomed to the Casa Nariño Palace in Bogota by Colombian President Iván Duque to kick off a two-day official visit. According to governmental sources, the main topics are economic and trade issues, but also Spain aiding possible peace negotiations with the National Liberation Army, or ELN. Sanchez has already visited Chile, Bolivia, and will go on to Costa Rica.
Así es, compañeros, ya está todo listo para la visita del presidente del gobierno español.
Everything's ready for the visit of Spain's president to Costa Rica's foreign ministry. The flags of both countries have been raised, and soon a red carpet will be placed to receive Pedro Sanchez. He will meet with President Carlos Alvarado to talk about bilateral cooperation topics, such as environmental issues. They will also give a conference on climate change and how to deal with the changes that will occur all around the world in the coming years and decades. This will happen in the presidential palace on Friday morning, in front of high-ranking officials related to environmental issues. The discussions on bilateral topics between both countries will happen behind closed doors.
Ecuador has said that the temporary immigration rules for Venezuelans were because of fake IDs. Venezuelans who used to be able to enter Ecuador with an ID card are now expected to have passports. Ecuador's Foreign Minister Jose Valencia gave the explanation in an interview with Radio Susucios. Valencia says many countries require passports from migrants as a security measure. He also said it's not clear if Venezuelan migrants could be classified as refugees, but they can always fill out the paperwork. Argentina's currency has continued in free fall despite a dramatic move by the central bank to raise interest rates to 60%. The peso lost a further fifth of its value on Thursday. The latest collapse came after President Mauricio Macri asked the IMF to bring forward payments on its $50 billion bailout loan. But the markets have shown they no longer trust the government's ability to deal with the economic crisis.
The market isn't believing the government today, and above all, it's not believing the economic team. I think that if the finance minister and central bank president Luis Caputo don't step aside today, this will get much worse because it's not a matter that it's happening because of economic measures that were taken, but rather that, at this moment, the actors have lost credibility.
A large crowd has gathered in Argentina as teachers continue their strike. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, has more.
University workers continue to strike in Buenos Aires. They are demanding better pay. You may recall the gas explosion at the University of Buenos Aires, which left 2 deaths. The union has voiced concern about the difficult situation public school teachers face. There is also an inadequate budget for infrastructure work. High school and elementary school educators will also join this protest. It is expected to be one of the biggest in the country.
In El Salvador, the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front is hoping to secure election victory. Presidential candidate Hugo Martinez has just hit the campaign trail. Our correspondent has the details.
Efectivamente, el candidato a la presidencia por el...
Martinez listened to the concerns of the people when he visited various municipalities. He was accompanied by his vice presidential running mate, Karina Sosa. The elections will take place next February. The party will officially present its candidates on its September convention. We go back to you.
Still in El Salvador, and indigenous communities are fighting to preserve ancient lands. They say the presidential veto is not being respected.
2 decades ago, the Tacuchalco site was declared cultural property. Last year, the president used his veto power to preserve it. The site is now earmarked for housing development.
Our heritage should be respected. These lawmakers will be denying the Salvadoran people their own history, their own cultural heritage.
Construction work has already caused damage. The Ceniza River has also become polluted. It is a water source for nearby communities. Indigenous people want the state to buy the land. They say the company carrying out the project should also be fined.
We are urging the Culture Ministry to protect Tacuchalco.
They also want the site declared as Tacuchalco, sacred place for memory and ancestral identity.
The decree not only put Tacuchalco at risk, over 800 archaeological and historical sites are also in jeopardy.
Social movements say ancestral seeds should be planted on the land. They believe it's an appropriate location for museums and an indigenous Nahuatl language school.
We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your green zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Telesur is getting ready to launch its signal in Africa. From this Friday, our English language channel will be available in 25 countries across the continent. It's another step towards our aim of connecting the global south.
As night falls over the American continent, Telesur's signal will already be rising across the African continent. Cultures, knowledge, debunking the myths of Mother Africa. From there, we will be telling new stories. We want to be a platform for the voices of the African peoples.
We're about to experience the joining of two continents. Our histories have been intricately connected. We share a common cause. A people who share the same dreams for the future. This connection has become a reality today as we extend our TV signal, and the name of that TV signal is Telesur.
The north of Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, Eastern and Southern Africa. We will be there, bridging the gap.
South Africa is a contested space. It's a space where we've got a free market economy. It's a place where we've had a beautiful reconciliation period, but it's also a place full of contradictions. It is the birthplace of Nelson Mandela, and it is connected in a very, very deep way with the solidarity movements of Latin America.
All the resources of Telesur at its central headquarters in Caracas and in Quito are ready.
So today, Telesur begins its broadcast in Africa, 25 countries in the continent, and we're connecting the global south. I think it's an amazing opportunity. The idea that there's two peoples around the world, one in Latin America and one in Africa, that are so far away, but that still have so many things in common. And the opportunity to have a channel that can actually connect those two, it's just an amazing opportunity.
Our ally in Africa is the production company Moja Media,
where we enter a new era in the media environment in Africa, because Moja Media wants to create a disruptive media environment where we can change the narrative of the current Western focus and multinational focus on the news media and stranglehold of the narrative coming to Africa.
A part of America in the heart of Africa. Telesur, connecting the global south.
Hundreds of migrants have been evacuated from detention centers in Libya after getting caught between clashes. The migrants, mainly from Eritrea, Ethiopia and Somalia, were relocated from the facility near Tripoli to a supposedly safer place by the United Nations and other aid workers. They were left behind by their guards after fighting between rival groups reached the area they were in. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has arrived in Ghana to address investment and migration in the region. This is the second step of her African tour, which started with Senegal. She is expected to focus talks on migration because Ghana is a major source of people heading to Europe. Merkel is joined by several German CEOs to also focus on boosting business relationships.
We have to be able to also address the root causes of how come these insurgencies have been able to take root in our areas. And that is the whole business of economic growth, the training of our youth, the acquisition of skills, and the creation of opportunities that would allow people to have a more positive engagement with life, rather than throwing bombs and maiming and destroying people.
Ghana received the best evaluation from Reporters Without Borders in regards to press freedom. It has gone through 3 peaceful transfers of power. Corruption, much can be still improved. One of the reasons why Compact with Africa makes sure that tax processes are transparent through digitalization also applies to foreign companies trying to evade tax. Overall, Ghana is one of the leaders of democratic development in Africa. Ghana and Germany share same values and principles.
And British Prime Minister Theresa May has danced with Kenyan scouts at an anti-plastic initiative. As May is wrapping up her African tour in Nairobi, she attended an event by the UN to raise awareness about plastic pollution among the youth. The UN Environment Chief joined May to launch a new Plastic Challenge badge. She also said the UK government will consult on extending the 5-penny plastic bag charge to all retailers, not just big businesses. China has pledged to further strengthen military partnership with African countries. Spokesperson of the Chinese Ministry of National Defense, Wu Quang, has commented on the strengthening of military ties between China and Africa at a press conference just ahead of the Beijing summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation to be held on September 3rd and 4th.
Looking ahead, China will continue to help Africa to enhance its security capacity, building independently, promote cooperation in multiple aspects, including personal training, logistics equipment, maritime escorts, peacekeeping operations, healthcare and humanitarian assistance, strive to usher in a new era for bilateral military ties, and make positive contributions to maintaining peace and security of Africa and the world at large.
Jamaica has a new branch of the police service. The Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Unit is a merger of the Motorized Patrol and Traffic Divisions. The new unit showed off its neon vests and helmets with matching motorcycles on Wednesday. Its mission is to target traffic vending and littering violations, in addition to the regular public safety issues.
So the JCF naturally is responding and continues to respond to the varying needs of our citizens, as overall we seek to improve and make better our business district, our corridors, thereby enhancing the overall safety of our people.
Unions in Trinidad and Tobago are calling for a national strike on September 7th. The call comes after the government announced the closure of the Petrotrin oil refinery. They said the refinery was unprofitable and severely in debt. The unions want the government to release all of the information on the impending closure. Over 2,000 jobs could be lost.
If the PNM government, led by Keith Rowley, and the board of Petrotrin are not prepared to do that, then what happens next will be at their feet. It is not the trade union movement to blame for what comes next.
Come next week Friday, to the media gathered here this morning, to the parents, please keep your children at home. Schools will be devoid of teachers come next week Friday.
Citizens are worried about the impact job losses will have on society.
I want to know how much people they want to put on the bread line again. If they want more murdering and more killing and thieving and things. That is all I want to know. How much more people they're going to make suffer again in this country?
If they're shut down, where do they go? That's some people I don't know about. So it's tough, it's real tough out there.
We had cocoa, they don't have it with rice, they don't have it with, we had sugar, they don't have to, no, we have oil and gas, and they don't have that too.
We'll take a short break now. World News after this. Welcome back. Dozens of activists have gathered outside the Center for Criminal Justice in Philadelphia to demand the release of ex-Black Panther member Mumia Abu-Jamal, who's serving life in prison for the murder of a Philadelphia police officer in 1981. The former member of the Black Panthers and president of the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists, Abu-Jamal, was sentenced to death for the murder of Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner in 1982. After numerous appeals, that sentence was commuted to life in prison without parole.
What the judge did decide, based upon the arguments made by Mumia's attorneys, is that he would grant a 60-day continuance for yet more searching of files.
A Palestinian girl who became a viral hit after footage showed her climbing an Israeli security wall to get home has spoken out. Speaking from the West Bank city of Hebron, 12-year-old Saja Borkan describes how she was forced to climb the wall to get to her house because it was closed by the Israeli army.
The day before yesterday, the door was closed, and I went from there, and when I got back, I jumped over the wall. They closed the door because of throwing the stones, and they're still throwing stones, but now they've put up a wall.
Now let's have a look at some of the other stories making headlines around the world.
After a series of clashes between far-right protesters and counter-protesters, fresh demonstrations have taken place in the German city of Chemnitz. Riots broke following the killing of a German man by 2 immigrants. Police have brought in reinforcements from across the country to control the situation.
I think the best thing to do right now is to speak to those who feel affected and who are concerned, to evaluate what happened and to discuss ideas about what to do in such a situation in Chemnitz, to keep people together and not to further upset them.
Syria's Foreign Minister Walid Muallem has said Western aggressions would not prevent Damascus from retaking all Syrian territory. He is on a state visit to Russia and has met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who also warned the West not to play with fire in order to prevent the anti-terrorist operations in Idlib. Movies from Central and South American countries have been leading the chart at the 75th edition of the Venice Film Festival in Italy. Argentine thriller film The Accused, directed by Gonzalo Tobal, and Roma, directed by Alfonso Cuarón, are particularly being praised. 21 movies are competing for the prized Golden Lion, which will be awarded on September 8th, the last day of the 2018 Venice Film Festival.
Usain Bolt is lacing up his football boots as he gets ready for his football debut in Australia on Friday. The sprint sensation wants to transition into professional football. There's a lot of hype for this match. However, Bolt may not play a full 90-minute game for Australia's Central Coast Mariners. 10,000 fans are expected to attend the match, but if you can't get a seat, it will be broadcast live on pay television. The casket of the music icon Aretha Franklin has been brought to her father's church in Detroit in the United States ahead of a tribute concert on the eve of her funeral. Thousands of fans have gathered to pay their respects to the Queen of Soul. Friday's funeral at the Greater Grace Temple is just for family and friends. A concert honoring Franklin's life and legacy has been organized, and thousands of fans are expected to attend. The legendary singer influenced generations of singers with her unforgettable hits, including Respect, Natural Woman, and I Say a Little Prayer. We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telestirtv.net/English. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telestir English, I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you for watching.
Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on innovation, conservation, human well-being, and human rights. Keep up to date on the latest innovations in science and technology with At the Moon.